My name is Jessica Lee, and last week my 6-year-old daughter got a cut on her hand, and it cost us our home. My parents blamed her for a broken jar of jam, and within minutes we were one breath away from being thrown out. If you've ever had to protect your child from the very people who raised you, you'll understand why I won't stop until we get our home and our dignity back. Before I dive into our story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Have you ever had to fight back against your own family? I'd love to know. Now let me take you back to where everything started falling apart. It was just jam. Strawberry jam, to be exact. A $1.99 jar from the corner store, now shattered in a pool of glass and sticky red streaks across the linoleum floor of my parents' kitchen. But to my father, it might as well have been a crime scene. "She ruined everything again," he roared, his voice slicing through the room like a cleaver. His face was red, fists clenched, towering over my daughter as if she had smashed it on purpose. "She's always wrecking things." Lily stood frozen beside me, tears welling in her big hazel eyes, her little hand bleeding from a fresh cut across her palm. Her lower lip trembled. I dropped to my knees, gathering glass with shaking fingers, trying to shield her from the storm behind me. My voice cracked as I whispered, "It's okay, baby, Mommy's here." But it wasn't okay. Not at all. My mother, arms crossed tightly over her cardigan, spat her words like venom. "You're both so careless. That jar was from the organic market. Do you have any idea how expensive it was? And now blood on the floor. God, Jessica, this is exactly why we said." "I said it's just jam," I snapped, louder than I meant to, louder than I ever allowed myself to be in this house. My father's face twisted in disgust. "You better watch your tone in my house." His house. That phrase made my throat burn. We'd been staying here for 3 months. 3 long months since I lost my job after the accident and couldn't keep up with rent. 3 months of walking on eggshells while trying to rebuild something close to stability. For my daughter's sake, not mine. And still, this house never felt like home. "I'll clean it up," I muttered, reaching for a sponge as the blood from Lily's hand mixed with the fruit smear across the white cabinet doors. Behind me, I felt my mother's eyes pierce through my spine. "Maybe if you actually disciplined her once in a while, this wouldn't happen." That hit harder than it should have. Because the truth was, I was barely holding it together. 2 part-time jobs, odd shifts, no health insurance, and no peace. But I wouldn't let them see me break. Not again. I wrapped Lily's hand in a clean towel and held her close. She was sniffling now, little sobs shaking her shoulders. "Mommy, I didn't mean to. I just wanted toast." "I know, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice thick with tears I refused to let fall. "It's not your fault." Because it wasn't, it never was. But in this house, intention didn't matter. Blame came fast. Punishment came faster. And that night, kneeling in a pool of broken glass and broken trust, I realized something I couldn't unknow. We couldn't stay here any longer. That night, the house went quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was that eerie, dangerous silence that settles just after an earthquake, where everything's still standing, but nothing feels safe. Lily had cried herself to sleep, her tiny body curled toward the wall in the cramped twin bed we shared, wrapped in a quilt my grandmother had made back when warmth didn't come with conditions. Her cheeks were pink and tear-streaked, and her bandaged hand peeked out from under the blanket, soft and still and unbearably fragile. I stood in the kitchen with a wet rag and a trembling heart. The jam had hardened into syrupy streaks along the bottom cabinet doors. Some had seeped into the corners, tinting the cheap wood pink. There was no hiding the evidence. They'd see it in the morning. They'd talk about us like a stain, something they hadn't meant to have, something they didn't know how to clean. I dipped the rag back into the bucket, squeezed it until my knuckles went white. Then I scrubbed. Scrubbed like the cabinet had said something cruel. Like if I just worked hard enough, I could erase the sound of my mother's voice screaming about how we never contribute, or my father slamming his palm on the table, muttering, "That girl is broken." "She's not broken," I had whispered as I knelt beside Lily earlier, wrapping her cut with trembling hands. But I couldn't shake the way his words clung to my skin, like something foul that water alone couldn't wash off. I was still scrubbing when I heard soft footsteps behind me. "Mommy!" Lily, standing in the doorway in her favorite fuzzy socks, gray with little cat faces on the toes. Her curls were sticking up, her cheeks flushed with sleep. She rubbed her eyes, clutching the sleeve of her oversized pajama shirt. "I had a dream," she whispered. "The jam turned into a monster." I set the rag down and opened my arms. She rushed into them like she'd been waiting all night. "It tried to eat me," she mumbled, curling into my lap. "And Grandpa was yelling at it, but I think he was really yelling at me." My throat tightened. I swallowed it down. "It was just a dream, baby." "Did I make them mad again?" Her voice cracked right down the middle. "No, Lily, you didn't do anything wrong. It was an accident." I kissed her head, inhaling the faint scent of strawberry shampoo. "But it broke," she said quietly. "And Nana said it was expensive." "It was a jar of jam," I replied, maybe too sharply. "A jar of jam shouldn't ruin a day or a person." She was silent for a while, then whispered, "Are we still a team?" That undid me. I cupped her face gently and nodded. "We are always a team, you and me, no matter what." We sat there a long time, wrapped in the hush of a kitchen that had heard too much. The overhead light buzzed softly. A train passed in the distance. Somewhere upstairs, a toilet flushed. Then Lily lifted her head. "Should we clean the rest?" Her voice was so small, so tired, but still willing, still trying. I took her hand gently, her uninjured one, and helped her to her feet. Together, we wiped the cabinet doors until our arms ached. She scrubbed beside me like a soldier, lips pressed in concentration, barely 6 years old and already learning how to clean up emotional messes that weren't hers. When we were done, we sat side by side on the cold tile. My knees ached. Her hand throbbed. We were both bone-tired. She leaned her head against my shoulder and asked, "Why doesn't Grandpa like me anymore?" I didn't answer right away. Because what do you say to that? He doesn't like how loud you are, how much space you take up. He doesn't like how you remind him that his daughter failed, at least in his eyes. He doesn't like that you cry when you're hurt, or laugh when he thinks it's inappropriate. He doesn't like the mess, the noise, the need. But what I said was, sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind. It doesn't mean you're not lovable. "Are we going to stay here forever?" I held her tighter. "No, baby, not forever." She looked up at me with those wide eyes, so full of hope it made me ashamed to still be here, still accepting the scraps of space they gave us. I looked around the kitchen, every corner of it lined with silent judgment, every dish in the sink a reminder that we were guests, that we didn't belong. It didn't feel like exile yet, but it was coming. I could feel it in the way my mother slammed cabinets after I left the room, in the side eyes, in the sighs, in the not-so-quiet conversations just out of earshot that they wanted me to hear. I pulled Lily's blanket tighter around her shoulders and kissed her forehead. "We're going to be okay," I said, and I meant it, even if I didn't know how. The October rain came down sideways that afternoon, cold, relentless, almost personal. I remember standing at the bus stop, my uniform clinging to my skin, socks soaked through, clutching the $17 in tips I'd scraped together during my shift at the diner. My hands were still red from the dishwater. I thought about picking up something warm for Lily on the way back, a cheap scarf maybe, or those marshmallows she loved. But something stopped me, a tug in my gut. When I turned the corner onto my parents' street, I saw her, Lily, huddled on the porch, a soaked bundle of pink and gray, her unicorn backpack resting beside her like it had collapsed from exhaustion. Her hair, usually a halo of soft curls, hung in wet strands across her face. She was crying, loud, ugly sobs that shattered something inside me the moment I heard them. I dropped my bag and ran. "Lily, what happened?" She looked up, her lips blue. "My key didn't work. Mommy, my key doesn't work." I blinked at her, rain sliding down my face, unsure if I'd heard her right. "You tried the key," she nodded, sniffling. "Twice." I looked at the door, heart pounding, then turned the knob myself. Locked, I knocked once, then again, louder. "Mom," I called through the door. "It's me." Silence. Then footsteps, a pause, the door opened 2 inches. My mother's face appeared, cool as slate. "You don't live here anymore," she said flatly. It didn't register at first. "What?" I said, "You don't live here anymore." Her eyes flicked to Lily behind me, then back. "We've had enough." The door slammed before I could answer. For a second, I couldn't move. Rain hit the porch roof in rhythmic smacks, and Lily clung to my leg, shivering. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a warning. It was an execution. I pounded on the door again, now wild. "You're locking us out. Are you serious?" No answer. I kicked it once just to feel something. The wood rattled but held. Lily whimpered beside me. Did we do something wrong? No, I said through clenched teeth, gathering her into my arms. No, we didn't. But even as I said it, panic rose in my chest like floodwater. They locked us out. No suitcase, no clothes, no toothbrush, no phone charger. They didn't even bother to pack our things. We were thrown out like garbage. I pulled out my phone and dialed first my dad, then my mom. Straight to voicemail. No messages, no texts. Nothing. My fingers were trembling too hard to hold the screen. I crouched down and wrapped Lily's coat tighter around her. It was too thin for this weather. I'd meant to replace it last week. We couldn't afford it. I pressed my forehead to hers. We'll figure this out, okay? But my voice was shaking. She nodded, trusting me, still trusting me, and I wanted to scream, because I'd made her believe I could protect us, that I had some plan, some safety net. But all I had was a wet $20 bill, a dying phone battery, and a daughter who thought being a team meant she didn't have to cry too loud when she was scared. I kissed her cheek and held her tight, blinking back tears. Across the street, curtains twitched. No one came out. And on that porch with the wind clawing at our backs, I felt something shift in me. A line had been crossed. They didn't just turn us away. They made us homeless. And this time, I wasn't going to pretend they hadn't. I hadn't spoken to Bri in almost 5 years. We'd met in college, two broke girls sharing a dorm mini fridge and dreams bigger than our student loans. She had a laugh like a runaway train, and this way of making everyone feel like they belonged. We drifted after graduation, like people do. She stayed in Columbus. I moved back home after Lily was born. I never thought I'd need to ask her for anything. But desperation has a way of rewriting your pride. It was nearly 10 p.m. when I finally texted her from the parking lot of a closed laundromat, the only place I could find with a bit of light and a dry bench. Lily was curled on my lap, shivering, both of us wrapped in my work apron. I stared at my phone a long time before hitting send. Hey, it's Jessica. I know it's been a while. I wouldn't reach out like this unless I had no one else. We're in trouble. Me and Lily. Can I call you? My thumb hovered over the screen. Then send. I told myself not to expect anything. People move on. They build their own lives, but 5 minutes later my phone buzzed. Bri, where are you? I didn't even know how to answer that. Technically homeless, squatting behind a laundry cart, but before I could type anything else, it buzzed again. Bri, come stay with us. I have a spare room. I'll text you the address. Just come. You don't owe me a thing. I broke. Right there on that grimy bench, I just broke. I sobbed into Lily's hair, clutching the phone like it was oxygen. I think part of me didn't believe anyone would say yes. Not after all the times I'd told myself I wasn't allowed to ask. Bri lived in a little walk-up in Columbus, about 2 hours away. I hadn't even realized how close we still were. I called a cab, paid for it with the last of my tips. Every bump on the highway felt like it was shaking loose something inside me I didn't know I'd been holding. When we arrived, it was almost midnight. The front porch light was on, and there she was, Bri, standing barefoot in sweatpants and a hoodie, arms crossed, eyes wide. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, looked at Lily. And then she opened her arms. I'm sorry it took me this long to come find you, she whispered into my hair. I cried again. I was getting used to that. She helped carry our bags, which was mostly just Lily's backpack and the sweater I'd tied around my waist. Inside, her place smelled like lentil stew and lavender. Warm, lived in. There were 3 coffee mugs in the sink and a puzzle half-finished on the coffee table. It felt like a life that wasn't falling apart. You're safe here, she said simply. I couldn't even say thank you. I just nodded, afraid that if I opened my mouth, I'd start screaming and never stop. Bri showed us the guest room, small, cozy, with a twin bed pushed against the wall and an old quilt I recognized from college. This okay for Lily? It's perfect, I whispered. Lily climbed into bed without a word. She was too tired to ask questions. As I pulled the blanket up to her chin, she looked at me, eyes heavy. Is this a sleepover? I smiled. Yeah, the best kind. Do we have to go home tomorrow? I hesitated. No, baby, we don't. And in that moment, I knew something for sure. I was never going back. The first week in Bri's apartment passed like a dream I didn't trust. Lily adjusted faster than I did. Maybe because kids don't carry shame the same way adults do. She was just happy to have a room with a door, a bed that didn't creak, and a window where she could tape her drawings. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop bracing for the other shoe to drop. I offered to clean, to cook, to watch Bry's cat while she worked long hours at the medical clinic downtown. She always smiled and waved me off. "You're not a tenant. You're family." Family. I didn't know how to carry that word anymore without it cutting both ways. Then Lily got sick. It started as a cough. Dry, persistent, just enough to keep her up at night. I hoped it would pass. But by the end of week 2, her fever was spiking and she could barely keep Soup down. I knew what I should do. Take her to urgent care. Get antibiotics, ask for help. But all I saw were dollar signs, flashing red like sirens in my head. I had no health insurance. No savings. No car. Even the cape felt like too much to gamble with. So I brewed peppermint tea, wrapped her in Bry's thickest blanket, and held a cool washcloth to her forehead through the night. I whispered stories in the dark and told her everything would be fine. She believed me, but I didn't believe myself anymore. Each day I checked job listings on my borrowed phone. Waitress, housekeeper, temp clerk. Rejection after rejection poured in like clockwork. Too long out of the workforce. No reliable address. No references from my last job. One manager even told me, "We don't take people without current pay stubs. Policy." I wanted to scream. How do you get pay stubs if no one will give you the job? One night after Lily had finally drifted off, I found Bry in the kitchen reheating leftover pasta. She looked at me, her brow furrowed. "You haven't eaten again," she said. I sat down at the table and rubbed my eyes. "Not really hungry. You've lost weight, and you look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I haven't," I admitted, tears threatening to spill again. "I feel like I'm always behind, no matter what I do." Bry placed a bowl in front of me and sat down across from me. "You're not behind, Jess, you're in survival mode." "I'm sorry we're still here," I blurted. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. You offered us a bed and now we're still here." "Jessica," she said firmly, "you and Lily aren't guests. You're not a burden, you're my people. You were there for me when I had nothing. This is me showing up for you." Guilt wrapped around my ribs like barbed wire. "I feel like I'm failing her," I said quietly. "I can't even take her to the doctor. I can't even buy a thermometer that works." Bry reached across the table and took my hand. "You love her. She knows that. That's not failure. That's being a mother in a world that punishes women for needing help." And maybe that's when it started to shift, just a little. That night, as I knelt beside Lily's bed and pressed a new cold compress to her brow, she looked up at me with glassy eyes and whispered, "You smell like noodles." I laughed. Actually laughed. And in the soft glow of the hallway light, for the first time in what felt like months, I started to believe we might just make it. Not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually. I never planned to become invisible. But somewhere between the morning shifts at the diner and the evening hours mopping up floors at the office complex downtown, I started to fade. Just another woman in a service apron, riding the bus half asleep, coffee in hand, hope wearing thin. I took 2 jobs. One started at 6 in the morning. The other ended just after 10 at night. I'd get home around midnight, peel off my shoes, and kiss Lily's forehead as she slept. Most nights, I'd whisper bedtime stories while she was already dreaming. Sometimes I wasn't even sure she heard me, but I kept doing it anyway, because routine was the only thing holding us together. "Once upon a time," I'd murmur, brushing her curls back, "there was a little girl who could survive anything." Some nights I cried in the hallway so she wouldn't hear. Other nights I just stood by her bed, exhausted, and whispered, "We're almost there," even if I didn't know where there was. Bry, bless her, had turned into something I hadn't expected, a second mother to Lily. And oddly, Lily thrived in it. She'd run to Bry with drawings, cling to her during scary parts of movies, even call out her name when she had a nightmare. It stung, I won't lie, but it also saved me. One Saturday evening, I came home from my second job early. The last client had canceled. I was too tired to feel grateful. The apartment was filled with music, some vintage soul track that Bry liked to hum off-key. I opened the door quietly and walked into a scene I didn't expect. Lily and Bry were sitting on the rug, legs crossed, working on a massive jigsaw puzzle. A half-empty bowl of popcorn sat between them. Bry was laughing at something Lily had just said, her head thrown back, completely relaxed. It hit me like a punch to the chest. That used to be me. Not long ago, I was the one on the floor with Lily, doing puzzles, burning popcorn, laughing at 6-year-old jokes about unicorns wearing sunglasses. But now I was just the shadow who came and went, the woman who worked, the woman who slept sitting up on the bus, the woman who barely had enough energy left to brush her own teeth. Bri looked up and smiled. "Hey, you're home early. We're trying to find the sky pieces." Lily turned, face lighting up. "Mommy, Bri says we're puzzle queens." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. "That sounds about right." I walked over and crouched beside them, my knees cracked. "Mind if I help?" Lily scooted over and I reached for a corner piece. "You look tired," Bri said gently. I nodded. "I feel like I've aged 10 years in 2 months." She gave me a look, that soft, knowing look of hers. "You're doing so much," she said. "Too much." "I have to," I replied quickly. "Rent's not going to pay itself, and I'm not going to live off your kindness forever." She sighed, nudging a puzzle piece into place. "You don't owe me anything, Jess. I mean that." "I know," I said, and I meant it, "but I owe her." I glanced at Lily, who was now deep in concentration over 2 nearly identical blue pieces. Bri was quiet for a moment, then she said something that caught me off guard. "You're like a ghost lately. You show up, you disappear, and all you leave behind is your shoes by the door." I didn't answer because she was right. I started, then stopped. "I don't know how to be present and survive at the same time." She reached over and gently squeezed my wrist. "Maybe you're not meant to do it all alone." I nodded, blinking fast. And for just a second, I let myself believe her. 2 months. That's how long it had been since the night my parents slammed the door in my face. 61 days of coffee on the go, 5-hour nights, and the aching routine of survival. I tracked every dollar on the back of an old receipt stuffed in my wallet, every grocery run measured against bus fare, every bus ride weighed against how many minutes it stole from Lily. I did the math at least 100 times, and each time I came up short. It didn't matter how many shifts I picked up, how many meals I skipped, how many nights I stayed awake calculating side gigs I couldn't take because there simply weren't enough hours in the day. We couldn't afford a place of our own. Not even a studio, not even something with mold in the bathroom and no heating. I stared at the listings again that night, sitting at Bri's kitchen table, a dull ache forming between my temples. The cheapest 1-bedroom in the entire city wanted $1,300 up front. First, last, and deposit, plus proof of income, plus a background check. I didn't even have a printer. Lily was asleep in the guest room with her nightlight on. Bri was in the shower, and I just sat there, frozen, staring at a place I couldn't afford, a future I couldn't touch. When Bri walked in with a towel around her shoulders, she took one look at my face and knew. "What is it?" she asked, pouring 2 mugs of tea without waiting for an answer. I pushed the printout toward her. "Even if I save every dollar, even if I get a 3rd job, it's not enough. I'm running in circles, Bri, and I don't know how to stop." She didn't look surprised. Instead, she set down the mug in front of me, pulled out a chair, and sat. "Jess," she said, "you've been working yourself into the ground since the moment you walked in. And I've let you because I thought maybe that's what you needed to feel like you had control again." My eyes welled. "I'm not trying to be a charity case." "You're not," she said sharply. "You're a mother trying to do the impossible. You're trying to rebuild a life with no safety net, no backup, and no rest." I bit my lips so hard it hurt. Bri reached across the table and took my hand. "You can stay here," she said. "As long as you need, you're not on a clock. But Lily needs a home. This is a home." Tears spilled over then, not the kind you sob with, but the quiet kind. The kind that slip out when you've been holding your breath for too long. "I wanted to do this by myself," I whispered. "I wanted to prove I could." "You already have," Bri said softly. "You've proven it every single day you've gotten out of bed and showed up. You don't have to bleed for it to count." I laughed through the tears because somehow she always knew how to say the one thing that cracked the armor just enough. "I'm scared this is the best it's ever going to get," I admitted. "That this is it, just surviving." She didn't flinch. "Then we make surviving count," she said, "until the next door opens." And for once, I didn't argue. I just held her hand and let someone carry the silence with me. The bus never came that night. I'd finished my late cleaning shift at the insurance office downtown, my feet aching, palms raw from scrubbing baseboards that no one would ever notice. The air was biting, wet and sharp, the kind of cold that seeps through seams and finds every crack in your soul. I checked the app again. Delayed. Again. The last bus home was supposed to arrive at 10:12. At 10:34, I was still standing alone under the flickering streetlight, shoes squelching from the puddles, my breath coming in short clouds. My phone was at 2%. The rain picked up again, and suddenly the familiar exhaustion snapped. I sat down hard on the bench and cried, quietly at first, then not so quietly. I hated myself for it, crying in public like I was some helpless girl in a movie. But I couldn't hold it in anymore, not the stress, not the fear, not the unrelenting almost of everything I did. Almost got a third interview. Almost got Lily into that free tutoring program. Almost saved enough for a deposit. Almost, always almost. I didn't hear the car pull up until the headlights swept across my knees. A black SUV rolled to a stop right in front of the bench. The window slid down. A man leaned out. "Hey, you okay?" His voice was cautious, not pushy, not creepy, just curious. I wiped my face and looked away. "I'm fine." "You're soaked," he said. "Look, I'm not a creep, I swear. I saw you sitting here 20 minutes ago when I drove by. You haven't moved." I didn't answer. Part of me braced for the worst, but something about his tone, gentle, unsure, like he didn't want to scare me, kept me from running. "Seriously," he added, "you can keep your phone on you the whole time. I hate seeing people cry in the rain." I looked at the dead street, at the bus app still buffering on my cracked screen. And then I looked back at the man in the SUV. He looked about late 30s, clean-shaven, glasses. There was a reusable grocery bag on the passenger seat and what looked like a half-eaten salad in a Tupperware container. "Do you need a ride somewhere?" he asked, quieter now. "Or maybe just somewhere dry to charge your phone?" I hesitated, then nodded. I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The warmth hit me like a wave, heated seats. Soft jazz humming low on the speakers, a faint smell of pine and black coffee. "I'm David," he said, eyes on the road. "Jessica," I replied, clutching my bag to my chest. "You good if I drive slow? It's slick out." "Sure." We didn't speak for a few blocks, just silence and the soft slap of the wipers. Eventually, he asked, "Rough night?" I gave a dry laugh. "Rough year." He nodded like he got it. "Want to talk about it?" I surprised myself by saying yes. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I told him about Lily, about my parents, about the jam, the shouting, the porch, about Bry, about the double shifts and the failed apartment applications, about how it felt to chase your own breath day after day and still come up short. He didn't interrupt. Not once, just listened. And when I finally paused to take a breath, afraid I'd said too much, he said something I didn't expect. "I'm a property lawyer." I blinked at him. "What?" David shrugged. "I deal with home disputes, inheritances, weird clauses in old deeds. You'd be surprised how many families go to war over houses." "I didn't go to war," I murmured. "I just got kicked out." "Well," he said, turning onto the highway, "maybe you have more rights than you think." And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt something unfamiliar stir in my chest. Not fear, not despair, possibility. 3 days passed before I heard from him again. I had half convinced myself that David was just being polite, that maybe I'd overshared, maybe he regretted helping the crying woman on the bench. I mean, who pours their whole life story into the air within 10 minutes of meeting someone. But on the third evening, just as Lily was building a tower of cereal boxes in the living room, my phone buzzed. "David, can we meet? I found something, and it might change everything." My heart skipped. We met at a small coffee shop near the law office where he worked. I got there early, hands sweating despite the cold. The place smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon rolls. I wasn't sure I could swallow anything, but I ordered a tea just to have something warm to hold. David arrived right on time, briefcase in one hand, scarf in the other. He gave me a smile, but there was something different about it this time, more serious. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded. "You said you found something." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. My stomach twisted. "You told me your grandmother owned the house, right?" He asked. I nodded slowly. "It was hers for decades. She passed when I was in college. My parents moved in full-time after that. And she left a will." "I never saw it," I admitted. "I just assumed they handled everything. I was young, dealing with classes and Lily. I didn't question it." David tapped the folder. Well, I did some digging at the county clerk's office, found the property deed, and Jessica, there's a problem. My fingers tightened around the mug. What kind of problem? He opened the folder and pointed to a section of the printout. According to this, your grandmother never officially transferred the title to your parents. There was a mistake in the filing process, a missing signature from the estate executor. So, what does that mean? It means legally the house was never theirs, he said. It passed directly to you as her next living heir. Technically, you own it. The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked. No, that can't be right. He slid over a printed copy of the title records. I cross-checked everything. The house deed still lists her as the last verified owner, and you're her named heir. My throat went dry. So when they kicked me out, they kicked you out of your own house, he finished. I felt the floor shift beneath me. All this time I'd believed we were unwanted guests hanging on by a thread. But the truth, we were never trespassers. They were. David leaned forward. This isn't over your head, Jess. It's a clerical mistake, but a big one. One that can be corrected, and if you want to pursue it, I can help. The idea felt unreal. Too big, too dangerous. What happens if we fight it? I asked. Do they get to argue back? I mean, they've been living there, paying taxes. Possession doesn't overrule title, he said. And if they've been paying taxes, it only strengthens the paper trail we'll need to prove your rightful claim. The law leans heavily on records, not feelings. Feelings. God, if only the law could see the ones I'd swallowed. I don't have money for court, I said quietly. Or lawyers or anything. I'm not asking for money, David replied. Just a decision. Do you want to take your house back? I looked down at the deed, the bold, impersonal font spelling out the address of a place where I'd been humiliated, broken, and discarded. But I also saw Lily, her drawings on the fridge, her tiny shoes lined up by the door, her voice asking, do we have to go back tomorrow? That house was ours, not because of paperwork, because of what it cost us to lose it. I want it back, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. Not out of revenge, not to hurt them, but because it was always mine, and they took it. David smiled, slow and proud. Good, then let's make it right. The courthouse smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. I hadn't been inside one since Lily was born, not even for parking tickets. But now I stood in the marble-floored lobby gripping a manila folder like it was a life raft, my heart pounding like it might crack through my ribs. David was already there, dressed crisp in a navy suit, hair neatly combed, calm in that lawyerly way that felt both reassuring and unreal. You ready? He asked. I wasn't, not even close, but I nodded. Yeah, he handed me a pen. You just need to sign at the bottom. This is the petition to initiate the claim and the request for the temporary injunction. Basically, it prevents them from selling or making changes to the property while we sort this out. My hand shook as I wrote my name. It felt surreal, like I was signing for someone else. Someone who had power. Someone who wasn't used to being silenced. David filed the documents with the clerk, and the wheels began to turn. Then came the part I wasn't prepared for. He'd sent notice to my parents through the court as required. He said they'd be notified within 48 hours. What I didn't expect was to see them today. I was standing outside the hearing room when I heard my mother's voice. Jessica Marie Bennett, what the hell is this? I turned slowly. There she was. And behind her, my father, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed like he was already in the middle of a fight he planned to win. My mother was holding the envelope David had sent, the official court order with her full name printed in bold, the date of hearing, the legal challenge to her occupancy. You're suing us, she snapped. Your own parents, I swallowed hard. I'm asserting my rights. That house was left to me. My father stepped forward, the vein in his temple pulsing. Your grandmother gave us that house, Jessica. She told us she wanted us to have it. But she never filed the paperwork, David interjected smoothly, stepping beside me, which makes any claim based on verbal promise unenforceable. My mother blinked at him, then looked me over like she didn't recognize me anymore. This is low, even for you, she spat. Using a technicality to steal from your own family. I laughed, bitter and quiet. You locked your granddaughter out in the rain. You don't get to use the word family. She went quiet then, for a split second. Then the mask snapped back into place. You always were ungrateful. We let you live there, we fed you, we tolerated all your drama, and this is how you repay us. Tolerated? My voice broke, then steadied. You screamed at Lily over jam. She made a mess, my father barked. She's 6, I said sharply. And she was bleeding, and you cared more about a jar of preserves than your own granddaughter. People had started to glance our way, curious eyes flicking from suit to sweatpants, from fury to silence. I didn't care. David cleared his throat. You've been formally served. You'll receive additional documents soon. I'd suggest finding representation. My mother turned to him with fire in her eyes. You think you can just walk in and take what's ours? David didn't blink. Legally, that's exactly what we intend to do. The door to the hearing room opened, and the clerk called David's name. It wasn't the main trial yet, just a procedural step. But the look on my parents' faces as we walked past them, as we walked forward, was something I'd remember forever. It wasn't rage, it was disbelief. Because for the first time, I wasn't begging. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't folding myself smaller just to be allowed to stay. I was standing up, document in hand, rights intact, chin high. And my mother, once so confident in my silence, was gasping, "This can't be real." I didn't look back, I just said, "It is, and now I'm taking it back." The key felt heavier than I remembered. I stood on the front steps of the house I once called home, white shutters, chipped siding, the same welcome mat that had greeted me for most of my life. Only this time I wasn't knocking. This time I had the certified letter in one hand and legal possession in the other. Bri was with me. She drove, said she didn't want me going alone. And honestly, I was glad. Because my hands were shaking. "I can wait out here," she offered. I shook my head. "No, you're with me all the way." Lily was with a neighbor of Bri's, safe, warm, unaware of what her mother was about to do. David had delivered the final transfer papers to the county clerk that morning. It was official. The house belonged to me now, not symbolically, not emotionally, legally. I took a breath and opened the door. The smell hit me first. Old coffee, something burnt lemon cleaner, like they'd tried to make it presentable but missed the rot underneath. My parents were in the living room. My mother on the recliner, arms crossed. My father standing near the mantel as if guarding the fireplace. The moment they saw the envelope in my hand, the room went still. "What's that?" my father barked. I walked in, slow and steady. "This," I said, "is your formal notice to vacate." He snatched it from me, tearing the seal open. His eyes darted over the legal language, his face darkening with every line. My mother shot up from the recliner. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not," I said quietly. "It's done." "You can't do this," she hissed. "This is our home. We raised you here." I stared at her. "And then you threw me out, remember?" My father tossed the paper down like it burned him. "You ungrateful brat, after everything we did for you." "You mean after everything you controlled?" I said, voice shaking now but rising. "After you made me beg for space, for quiet, for safety." My mother moved toward me. "You're rewriting history. You were always dramatic." Bri stepped forward. "She's not dramatic. She's taking back what's hers." My father turned on her. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who actually treats her with decency," Bri snapped. And that's when he lunged. Not physically, not quite. But he stormed forward like he meant to tower over me, like the sheer volume of his fury could still make me flinch. "You don't get to waltz in here and take over like some queen," he growled. "This isn't over." I stood my ground. I'd waited years for this moment, imagined it 1,000 ways, sometimes with rage, sometimes with begging. But now that it was here, I just felt clear. "I'm done begging," I said, his breath caught. "This house is mine now, by law, by blood. And you can yell and stomp and throw your tantrums, but you're the ones who have to leave." "You'll regret this," my mother spat. I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I regret not doing it sooner." They didn't cry. They didn't plead. They just glared, like two people who suddenly realized their power had limits. I watched them pack in silence. Watched them shove boxes into the back of the same car they used to drive me to school. No hugs, no words, only the sound of the trunk slamming shut. When they finally pulled away, Bri exhaled. "You okay?" she asked softly. I looked around at the scuffed walls. The curtains my grandmother once sewed, the hallway where Lily had taken her first steps, and then I smiled. "Yeah," I whispered. "I think I am." The silence felt different now. Not heavy, not threatening. Just quiet, like the house had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Bry showed up the next morning with 2 trays of lasagna, 3 mismatched flower pots, and a laundry basket full of things I didn't ask for but desperately needed. "Every home needs at least one green thing," she said, setting a fern on the kitchen windowsill. "Even if you forget to water it." Lily ran through the hallway barefoot, her laugh echoing off the walls. She wore her favorite pajamas, pink with tiny stars, and clutched a glittery wand she hadn't let go of since she unpacked it. "It's ours, Mommy," she yelled, spinning in circles. "All of it." And for once I didn't correct her. I didn't remind her that we had to be careful, that things could change, that safety was a maybe. Because this time it wasn't. This time it really was ours. We didn't have much: an air mattress in the living room, borrowed plates from Bry, a thrift store coffee table I'd picked up for $5. But the moment I lit a cinnamon candle and watched Lily tape one of her drawings to the fridge, it felt more complete than any place I'd ever lived. "I miss this house," Lily said, climbing into my lap later that night. I kissed her temple. "Me too." Bry sat on the floor beside us, leaning against the wall. "You know," she said, "you've been strong for so long, Jess. I hope you know you don't have to be anymore." "I do," I said quietly. "But I think I still will be." We laughed, the 3 of us. There were still papers to sign, things to fix, utilities to sort through. I'd found a cracked pipe under the kitchen sink, and the upstairs bathroom still smelled faintly of mildew. But I didn't feel overwhelmed. Not this time, because I wasn't starting over. I was starting forward. That evening, David stopped by to check the paperwork one last time. He walked through the house slowly, pausing at family photos I hadn't taken down yet, examining old paint lines and crooked door frames with the eye of someone who sees not flaws, but stories. "I think your grandmother would be proud," he said as he handed me the finalized deed. "I hope so," I said. "She was the only one who never made me feel like I had to earn a place to belong." "Well," he smiled, "now you don't have to. It's legally yours." Lily peeked into the room. "Is this the house boss?" David laughed. "Sure is." Bry pulled a bottle of sparkling cider from her tote bag. "To new beginnings," she said, raising a glass. We clinked plastic cups. And as we sat there in the soft hum of our finally quiet house, no yelling, no tension, just the glow of lamplight and the sound of Lily humming, I realized something. I didn't get justice through revenge. I got it through return. Through the people who stood by me. Through the love that built this home back brick by brick, breath by breath. 3 months later, the house felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Like it had decided to believe in us again. I painted the front door a bold shade of teal, Lily's choice, and every time I turned the knob, I felt it, that small but powerful sense of this is mine. No conditions, no threats, no fear of being tossed out with the recycling. We planted marigolds under the front window, not because we knew how, just because we wanted to. The fridge was covered in drawings again, Lily's masterpieces of smiling suns, stick figure families, and a magical talking cat named Jellybean who seemed to live a very adventurous life. Her latest piece, taped front and center, had 3 figures standing in front of a house labeled us in bubble letters. One of the figures had big curly hair and held a wand. She'd written Mom, me, and Aunt Bry underneath in purple crayon. The mailbox got replaced last week. The old one was rusted and dented, still bore the faint outline of my father's handwriting in faded marker. I tore it off with a screwdriver, hand steady, and in its place installed a new silver box. Jessica and Lily, black letters, bold, permanent. I stood on the porch and stared at it longer than I expected. Some names you inherit, others you reclaim. Inside, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon toast. Bry was visiting for the weekend, curled on the couch in pajama pants, sipping herbal tea and bossing me around about the living room curtains. She thought they needed more color. I liked the simplicity. We compromised by arguing about it for an hour and then laughing ourselves breathless. "Your house is too peaceful now," she teased. "I miss the chaos." "You can always bring chaos with you," I said, grinning. She raised her mug. "Cheers to that." Lily danced in, holding a feather she found outside. "Mommy, can I make a dream catcher with this?" "Of course," I said. "You can make anything." Later that night, after Bri had gone to bed and Lily had finally passed out mid-story with a flashlight in hand, I sat in the kitchen alone, just me, and the hum of the fridge, and the soft creak of a home learning to trust again. I opened my journal and wrote one sentence. Dignity isn't something you're given. It's something you rebuild, brick by brick, alongside people who see you, even when you don't recognize yourself. This house had held so many memories, some bitter, some beautiful, but now it was holding us fully, finally. And if you had told me 6 months ago that I'd ever feel safe again in this place, I would have laughed, or cried, or both. But here I was, whole, wiser, and home.